On a quiet stretch of sand, hidden behind the dunes of Long Island, a secret lay buried for years. 11 sets of remains, 1 remote beach, and a killer who vanished with the tide. Welcome to Sleepy Crime Stories, where true crime meets midnight calm. Tonight, we're unraveling one of the most haunting, unsolved mysteries in modern American history, the Gilgo Beach murders, also known as the case of the Long Island serial killer. For over a decade, this case baffled investigators, terrified communities, and shattered families. But in 2023, everything changed. If you find yourself drawn to the quiet echoes of justice and stories that unfold like waves under moonlight, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss another episode. Now, let's begin where it all started: a missing woman, a burlap-wrapped body, and a beach that will never be the same. On a calm stretch of coastline in Long Island, New York, a mystery unfolded that would span over a decade and haunt the community. This is the story of the Gilgo Beach murders, an infamous case involving the unsolved killings of multiple young women, and one that has only recently seen major developments. Often referred to as the work of the Long Island serial killer, the mystery began to emerge in late 2010 when human remains were discovered along Ocean Parkway by Gilgo Beach. For years afterward, the case was shrouded in uncertainty, frustration, and fear as investigators struggled to identify a perpetrator. Families of the missing endured agonizing waits for answers. Yet, through all the dark twists, there has been a relentless pursuit of justice. In this narrative, delivered in a slow and steady tone, we'll explore how this mystery came to light, the investigations and obstacles that followed, and the significant breakthrough that occurred with an arrest in 2023. The aim is to tell this complex story gently but thoroughly, focusing on facts and empathy for the victims involved. The tale begins not with a body, but with a disappearance. In May 2010, a 24-year-old woman named Shannan Gilbert vanished after fleeing from a client's home in Oak Beach, a small community near Gilgo, where she had gone as an escort. It was Shannan's disappearance that inadvertently led police to stumble upon something far larger. On a chilly December day, December 11th, 2010, during routine searches along the brush of Ocean Parkway, a K-9 officer made a grim find: a set of human remains wrapped in burlap near Gilgo Beach. Within 2 days, by December 13th, 3 more bodies were found in the same vicinity, all within about a quarter mile of each other. These 4 victims would come to be known as the Gilgo Four, and their identities were soon confirmed: Melissa Barthelemy, 24, Megan Waterman, 22, Maureen Brainerd Barnes, 25, and Amber Lynn Costello, 27. All were young women who had been working as escorts and had gone missing between 2007 and 2010. For the tight-knit communities of Long Island, it was a shocking revelation that a killer, or killers, might have been hunting victims for years and using the isolated beach as a dumping ground. In the months that followed, the search intensified. Tragically, 6 more sets of human remains were discovered in the area during March and April of 2011, extending into neighboring Nassau County. These included not only additional adult women, but also the partial remains of a young child, a toddler-aged girl, and even an unidentified male, sometimes referred to as Asian doe. Some of these remains were later linked back to older cases. For instance, remains found at Gilgo matched those of a woman named Jessica Taylor, whose partial body had been found further east on Long Island back in 2003. Another set of remains, long known only as Fire Island Jane Doe, were identified in 2023 as Karen Vergata. The little girl discovered was found near a woman dubbed Peaches for a tattoo. In 2025, they would be identified as Tanya Jackson and her daughter Tatiana, The male victim remains unidentified, but is believed to have been trans or non-binary, based on clothing found. All told, by late 2011, authorities had a list of 11 victims thought possibly connected to the Long Island serial killer case. The sheer number of victims and the span of time raised chilling questions. Was this the work of one prolific serial killer, or could there be multiple killers using the same dumping ground? For a community that includes quiet seaside villages like Gilgo Beach, Oak Beach, and the broader towns of Suffolk County, the discovery of these bodies was devastating. The tranquility of the windswept dunes and gentle Atlantic waves now hid terrible secrets beneath the scrub brush. Media swarmed to the story, dubbing the unknown perpetrator the Long Island serial killer, LISK for short, or the Gilgo Beach killer. But despite the macabre attention, the investigation faced immediate challenges. Early on, it became clear that Suffolk County Police had difficulties in the case. Different victims had disappeared from different areas, some from New York City, some from other parts of the Northeast, which meant multiple jurisdictions were involved. There were also indications that the crimes spanned several years, possibly as far back as the late 90s for some remains, complicating the timeline. By the end of 2011, even though Shannan Gilbert's own remains were finally found in a marsh in December of that year, about 9 miles from the Gilgo 4 site, there was still no suspect identified for the murders. The Suffolk County Police Commissioner at the time publicly acknowledged the likelihood of a serial killer at large, but leads were scarce. Investigators had collected some forensic evidence, for example DNA and hair fibers from the burlap or the bodies, but these did not immediately match anyone in criminal databases. The killer had also been careful. Many of the women's phones had been used by the perpetrator to taunt families or check voicemail, but tracing those calls proved difficult as they were made from crowded Midtown Manhattan locations and via disposable burner phones. As the years rolled on, frustration grew. There was also internal turmoil within law enforcement. It later emerged that Suffolk County's then police chief, James Burke, actively blocked the FBI's involvement in the case early on. Burke himself was later convicted on unrelated charges, assault and corruption, and it's been suggested that under his leadership, the investigation suffered from lack of cooperation and possibly even deliberate stonewalling. This revelation raised anger and anguish. Had critical time been lost due to egos and corruption? Documentaries like Gone Girls, The Long Island Serial Killer, which aired in 2023, delve into how these issues impeded the case. Director Liz Garbus noted it was a cautionary tale of how police dysfunction allowed a killer to operate longer than they might have otherwise. During the 2010s, families of the victims became vocal, turning their grief into activism. Women like Mary Gilbert, Shannan's mother, and Lorraine Elah, Megan Waterman's mother, demanded accountability and kept the pressure on authorities to keep investigating. Candlelight vigils were held on Ocean Parkway in memory of the lost lives. The quiet beaches, with seagrass rustling in the ocean breeze, now bore crosses or small memorials where remains were found, silent testaments to lives cut short. All the while, the identity of the killer remained a phantom. Despite the lack of public progress, behind the scenes, the case was periodically reviewed. In 2015, a new Suffolk County Police Commissioner invited the FBI to join a Gilgo task force, finally opening more collaboration. A sense of urgency was renewed around 2018 to 2019, when a fresh set of eyes, including federal agents, profilers, and local detectives not previously involved, started re-examining evidence with updated technology. A critical development came with cell phone analysis. The killer had used a series of prepaid cell phones to contact some victims and even made the chilling choice to call one victim's family using her phone after she was killed, in the case of Melissa Barthelemy. By mapping these phone activities and cell tower hits, investigators gradually homed in on geographical patterns for the suspect. There were clusters of activity around Massapequa Park, a suburban community in Nassau County, and in Midtown Manhattan. This indicated a killer who perhaps lived on Long Island but worked or spent time in the city. After years of dead ends, the case's turning point finally arrived in 2022 and early 2023. Acting on the accumulated findings, Suffolk County authorities, led by a new district attorney, reactivated a secret Gilgo Beach task force. By cross-referencing the suspect profile, a Long Island resident tied to Massapequa Park who owned or had access to certain vehicles and matched other clues, they identified a man named Rex Heuermann. Heuermann, a 59-year-old architect living in Massapequa Park, fit the profile shockingly well. He lived with his family in a house not far from where the phone data concentrated and owned a first-generation Chevrolet Avalanche SUV, a vehicle that a witness in 2010 had mentioned seeing connected to one of the victim's disappearances. The Avalanche, a distinctive truck, turned out to be a key clue. A driver had been seen by a witness when Amber Costello went missing, and that truck was later traced to Heuermann. Investigators quietly put Heuermann under surveillance. They followed him on his commute into Manhattan, watched him at home, and even retrieved his trash to collect DNA. One day they observed Heuermann discard a crust from a pizza he'd eaten in Manhattan. That pizza crust was collected and sent for forensic testing, and it provided the DNA match investigators had been waiting for. DNA from the pizza matched a male hair that had been found on one of the Gilgo victims, Megan Waterman, back in 2010. Additionally, hairs found on two other victims turned out to belong to Heuermann's wife, likely incidentally transferred, further linking someone in his household to the crime scenes. The net was tightening. In early summer 2023, agents saw Rex Heuermann do something telling. He stepped out to a cell phone kiosk and added minutes to a prepaid burner phone. This burner's activity was being monitored, and it lined up with movements related to the case, essentially confirming that Heuermann was still using disposable phones, similar to those the killer had used. It was the final confirmation needed. After meticulous preparation, on July 13, 2023, Suffolk County Police moved in and arrested Rex Heuermann in Midtown Manhattan as he left his office. The public was stunned. Heuermann was an unassuming figure to most, a middle-aged professional with a wife and two children who had lived in the same Long Island neighborhood for decades. To find out he was accused of these heinous crimes was, and still is, chilling. Heuermann was swiftly charged with multiple counts of first-degree and second-degree murder for three of the Gilgo 4 victims, Melissa Barthelemy, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello. He was also named the prime suspect in the murder of the fourth, Maureen Brainerd Barnes, and later formally charged in her case as well. In total, by early 2024, Heuermann faced charges in the deaths of at least 7 women, the 4 Gilgo victims and 3 others, Jessica Taylor, Valerie Mack, and an unidentified victim. He has pleaded not guilty to all charges and is awaiting trial, but prosecutors have amassed a strong circumstantial case alongside the forensic links. The evidence revealed to the public includes the phone data, the DNA, the vehicle connection, and even internet search histories recovered from Heuermann's home that reportedly showed obsession with pornography, featuring the victims' profiles and relentless searches about the investigation itself. For Long Island residents, the arrest of Heuermann was a moment of both relief and reflection. Many had lived in fear that a serial killer was in their midst. Now they had a face and a name. Candlelight vigils for the victims turned into moments of cautious hope that justice might finally be served. The families of the women expressed profound relief that someone was caught. Though their journey is far from over, court proceedings can be long and emotional. Investigators, meanwhile, caution that the case isn't fully closed. There are still questions about additional victims. Could Heuermann, if guilty, have killed others beyond those known? There were at least 11 sets of remains. Some, like the murder of Tanya and her child, might involve a different killer or an earlier spree. Authorities are actively reviewing cold cases across New York and even other states to see if they can tie any to Heuermann's movements and activities. They're also examining unsolved cases of missing sex workers in the region to ensure no stone is unturned. In the wake of the arrest, the Long Island serial killer case remains front and center in true crime discussions, but with a notably different tone. For years, it was a terrifying unsolved mystery, the subject of speculation on web forums and several documentaries. Now, it is a story transitioning into the judicial phase. Still, the mystery is not entirely gone. We await the full truth of what happened and why. The Netflix documentary series Gone Girls: The Long Island Serial Killer, released in July 2025, has been especially effective in keeping the story in the spotlight. The series not only recounts the events, but also centers on the victims' lives and their families' fight for answers. It reminds viewers that these gone girls were real people with hopes and struggles, not just names and headlines. The conclusion of the series coincided with new updates, like the identification of Peaches and her daughter in April 2025, giving a sense that even now, pieces of the puzzle are falling into place. The director, LISK, spoke about the challenge of making a documentary about a live case. Even as they were wrapping editing, more developments, like an additional victim being added to Heuermann's alleged tally, were happening. As she noted, "Will there be more between now and the time that we go to trial? It's possible, it's probable." Indeed, by mid-2025, another charge had been added, and authorities hinted they were looking at cases in other states where Heuermann traveled. This story is still writing itself. From a community perspective, the case spurred changes in how law enforcement handles missing persons, especially those from marginalized communities. Many victims were sex workers whose disappearances sometimes didn't get timely attention. It also highlighted the need for interagency cooperation, as the eventual solution came when Suffolk County, neighboring counties, state police, and the FBI pooled resources and information. As of now, Rex Heuermann sits in jail awaiting trial, maintaining his innocence. If he is indeed the Long Island serial killer, then a dark chapter that began on a lonely beach may soon find closure in a court of law. If there were accomplices, or if someone else was responsible for some of the victims, those questions remain to be answered. But there's a sense that the long silence of Gilgo Beach has been broken. The families of victims like Melissa, Megan, Maureen, and Amber have at least seen the man accused of taking their loved ones brought into the light of justice, handcuffed and facing consequences. The Gilgo Beach murders remind us of the importance of perseverance. For years nothing happened, and then, seemingly all at once, everything happened. A suspect identified, evidence found, an arrest made. In our gentle retelling, we have walked the shoreline of this mystery, felt the cold sea wind where investigators once combed for clues, and we've honored the memory of those who lost their lives. This case, once a terrifying whodunit, now stands on the cusp of resolution. It's a testament to the dedication of a new generation of investigators and the unwavering voices of victims' families. Yet, a calm caution: the legal process will unfold slowly, and the truth will be tested in court. The public watches and waits. In the meantime, Gilgo Beach itself remains what it always was: a stretch of sand and sea, now quieter as the media trucks have left. A place where people still sunbathe in summer and fishermen cast lines in autumn. But for many, it will forever carry the echoes of those lost lives. The sign at the beach entrance, shown in our opening visual, reads, Gilgo Beach. As the sun rises over the Atlantic, it stands not just as a marker of place, but as a silent memorial to the victims whose final moments brought them there. We conclude this chapter hopeful that justice is on the horizon, and we do so in remembrance of the gone, but not forgotten, girls of Gilgo Beach.